Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What's going on, everybody? I hope you all have had a fantastic weekend thus far, and hopefully your Sunday is going to be amazing. As for us here on the podcast, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family this morning. We have been on the full court press with Andrew since news has broke about the MLA, and I think it's important enough to keep adding this to the catalog. It's important enough to keep adding context. It's important to keep building the profile, proving that Andrew is an absolute liar. And in my opinion, he most certainly is, folks. We have an article today from The Sun. The author of this article is Karen Brady, and the headline, Prince Andrew, talk to the FBI and show you've nothing to hide. This is all I've been saying from the jump, right? All I want is for this man to come forward and sit down with the investigators and talk about what he knows. That's all. Nobody's calling for people to get arrested without trials or thrown underneath Guantanamo Bay or anything like that, anything wacky or crazy. I'll leave all of that wrangling and political maneuvering and shitting on the system to you scuzzbags in so-called polite society. All we're asking for here is a trial. All we're asking for here is for these people to be arrested and to be held accountable for what they have done in a court of law. How difficult is that? For the rest of us, that's the way it works. But when it comes to this man and his friends and Gillian and the rest of them, well, they don't have to play by those rules. If Prince Andrew, a.k.a. the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, was as innocent as he proclaims, as innocent as his handlers proclaim, don't you think this man would come out swinging? Don't you think he wouldn't be talking about technicalities? Don't you think he'd be defending his honor and saying that this did not occur? He can't say that, though, folks, because guess what? In my opinion, all of it occurred. Every last thing that Virginia has said has been credible. Imagine you might have information which may help to convict those suspected of underage sex crimes and trafficking. Surely you would do anything you could to bring those responsible to justice. So it is extremely confusing why Prince Andrew, a.k.a. the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, is resisting demands to meet U.S. officials probing convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his associates. No, not really. It's not confusing at all, because we understand what's going on here. This isn't a man who is honorable. This isn't a man who cares about people. This isn't a man who cares about the survivors or what they went through. This is a man who all he cares about is his public image and using that image to further his own wealth. That's all he cares about. If he really cared about other people, if he really cared about what Jeffrey Epstein did to these girls, he would have come forward a long time ago, and he would have stepped up to the plate and been a man. But instead, he chose to be a bitch and hide behind mommy's skirts and act like he doesn't even know who Virginia Roberts is. Department of Justice investigators want to speak with Andrew as a witness. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in August of last year, allegedly, taking many of his depraved secrets to the grave. While that's true, there are a lot of those secrets that did not go to the grave with him. If anybody thinks that his partner in crime, Gillian Maxwell, doesn't have the keys to where all the bodies are buried, well, you have not been paying attention, my friends. Because Gillian Maxwell was certainly the brains behind the operation. She most certainly was involved in all leadership decisions. And even though Epstein might be gone, well, his secrets still remain. Despite this, Andrew has, according to U.S. prosecutors, repeatedly declined a request to be interviewed and had unequivocally stated he would not come in for one. And we talked about it last night. His excuse now is that the FBI is they're not acting in an honorable way. They're not playing with a straight bat, whatever that means. Meanwhile, again, for those of us who are paying attention, we realize that it's using loopholes, technicalities, and a bunch of BS. Not getting into the meat of the charges, not getting into the defense of himself, but blaming the FBI, blaming everybody else, and not taking a good, long, hard look in the mirror. There's a lot of that going on these days, folks. Instead, his lawyers say he was offered to provide a witness statement, which is not quite the same. Yeah, I'm not cool on just that witness statement. If it's just written, no way, no how. The prosecution should never be okay with that. This man should have to sit down and answer questions in front of a seasoned interrogator. For those of you who might have read the Joe Abercrombie books, the First Law trilogy, perhaps Sandan Glockta would be the proper interrogator for this man. Although I guess he knows that already, having submitted to the Car Crash Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis, during which he kept digging the hole he was in. Yeah, no doubt about that. He definitely kept on digging. In fact, he's digging so deep he might even be in China by now. If Andrew has got nothing to hide about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, why did he request to communicate with the FBI through a written statement? Exactly what I said, right? A written statement is the sort of thing that happens when the FBI really isn't interested in pursuing justice, okay? When they think that there's nothing, they can't get anything there, they'll acquiesce to the written statement. You know, at the end of the day, I guess it's better than nothing for them. But in a real case, when they're really charging hard and they're really going hard in the paint, a written statement will not get it done. A face-to-face with an interrogator is the only fate that should be acceptable in regards to this case for Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. Friends of the Duke this week claimed he was utterly bewildered by accusations that he was refusing to help the U.S. investigators. Friends, huh? Lickspittles, you mean, right? People that are just following around you because you're a prince of the blood and they're hoping beyond hope that at some point you might ascend back to your place amongst polite society and then they could ride your coattails a little longer. Well, there's going to be a lot of disappointment amongst them, and most certainly for you and your good friend Fergie too. But it all just feels a bit murky, doesn't it? Fighting with everything. He should jump at the chance of properly explaining his relationship with Epstein and his close friend Gillian Maxwell. Exactly what I've been saying from the beginning he should do. If he has nothing to hide and he is an honorable man and he didn't do the things that he's accused of doing, he should come forward and speak to the FBI like any normal person would do. Any innocent person would not go about having their name dragged through the mud like this. It's not like somebody's accusing you of not paying your rent, which they are, but this is a serious matter here, right? This isn't something to ignore, to let the courts decide. You need to come out and you need to defend your name. You need to defend your family's name and your country, buddy. You're a representative of the whole damn place. But no, what does he do? He acts like a guilty man, hides behind mummy skirts, hires a high-profile wheeling and dealing backroom law team, and then blames technicalities by the FBI? Come on, nobody's buying it. She has been accused of acting as a pimp for Epstein, which her lawyers have denied, and she has vanished. Much more than a pimp, co-conspirator, leadership role most certainly, if we're talking about this from a RICO perspective, and somebody who was calling the shots and pulling the strings from behind the curtain. Let's not call her a pimp, okay? That's ridiculous. Heidi Fleiss was a pimp, not Gillian Maxwell. No doubt the Duke has spent the past few months hoping this story will just go away or be eclipsed by other, bigger news events. But clearly, this story is going nowhere. Well, if a worldwide pandemic isn't going to make this story go away, if worldwide rioting and protesting, etc., isn't going to make this story go away, this man's only hope is a stray asteroid crashing into the Earth and destroying us all. That is the only way this story goes away. Unless, of course, you man up, Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, step forward and speak to the authorities. Anything short of that, well, get ready for a long, long few months. The bottom line is that if the authorities in the U.S. want to interview him, he must speak to them. Then he can repair his reputation and that of the wider royal family. Well, that's his only chance to at least have a shot at doing that, right? You have to defend yourself. I mean, I'm a big fan of the rule of law. If you're accused, then you have the right to defend yourself in a trial setting. Why is he being so obstinate? Why does he not want to talk to the authorities? Why would he continue to drag his 95-year-old mother and 99-year-old father through this madness? Why would he continue to drag his whole country through this madness? Narcissism is the answer. He needs to restore the public's trust in him. In his Newsnight interview, he referred to himself repeatedly as honorable. Yeah, I mean, we can say whatever we want about ourselves, right? I guess I could sit here and tell you that I can run, a 4.2 40, and I should have had my shot at playing football, but it just wasn't to be. Really? Anyone can say whatever they want. I'm honorable. Get the hell out of here. It's your actions that really paint the picture of who you are, not your words. And Andrew's actions have painted a Picasso-level picture of a scumbag. Well, now's the time to prove it. Just step up, do the FBI interview, and get it over and done with. And in all of this furor, let's not forget Epstein's survivors. If Prince Andrew can shed any light on Epstein, who killed himself, allegedly, before he could go to trial for new sex trafficking charges, then why won't he? That most certainly is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why will this man not be accountable for his actions? Why will this man, and I use the word loosely, by the way, continue to lie, scheme, and plot to try and get himself out of this? If he didn't do anything, and he was just a friend of Epstein, as disgusting as that is, don't you think you'd try and begin your redemption arc by coming forward and letting everybody know what was occurring, at least while you were there? Perhaps he feels that, as a member of the royal family, he should not be subject to the same kind of scrutiny as ordinary people. But that line of thinking won't cut the mustard in light of the seriousness of the allegations about Epstein and those who benefited from spending time with him. Look, I'm from America, and I love England, right? I love the British people are awesome. I got zero to say as far as criticisms of England. But when it comes to this sort of thinking, the monarchy and people being kings and princes, and it's just so foreign to me. And I don't understand it. Because guess what? Every day when he gets up, he puts his socks on the same way as somebody in a Mumbai slum does. So he's no better than anybody else, okay? He just happened to hit the genetic lottery and was born into purple. But besides that, he is an ordinary man. And we need to let them all know that, in fact, they are nothing but ordinary. Anyone who watched the documentary about survivor Virginia Roberts, Epstein, and Prince Andrew will agree that it seems unlikely that anyone who knew Epstein would have known something was not right. 100%. And finally, everybody else is starting to catch on to that. Everybody else who has not been following the case, people who have been following it at a distance. Now, everybody's starting to understand that every person who was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein knew what was going on, or at the very least had a bit of an idea. Now, that doesn't mean everybody was involved in actually abusing these girls, but it does mean that they were basically aiding and abetting a sex trafficking ring, in my opinion. I don't know about you, but if I showed up at one of my friend's islands and this was the case, yeah, A, I'd probably punch my friend directly in the face repeatedly, and then B, as soon as the cops arrived to arrest me, I would let them know what was occurring, because stuff like this is just beyond the pale. It is beyond the pale that all of these so-called rich and famous and so-called polite society members were hanging out with this man and had no idea. Please, I know if I had seen what is alleged, I would have walked straight out into the first police station. Absolutely right. Well, like I said, I don't think I'd be walking out. I think my anger would have overcome me, and I probably would have punched somebody directly in the face, knowing me, because at the end of the day, I'm built for confrontation, not conversation. But perhaps he can persuade prosecutors otherwise. And anyway, what is plain to see is that Andrew will only get his life back once he has answered some questions and cleared his name. That will never occur. I guess that's the olive branch that you could hang out to him and provide and say, well, maybe if, you answer these questions. But in reality, the public is never going to welcome him back no matter what happens going forward. In the meantime, though, I have another possibly more pressing question that I would like answered. Where the hell has Gillian Maxwell disappeared to, and why is she not being interviewed about her role in all of this? Well, I can answer that for you. It's because she's being protected still. It's because she still has the keys to the kingdom, and the people who are involved are still very, very scared of what Gillian can provide the authorities and about where all the bodies are buried. These people all know that. They know that Gillian Maxwell was much more than a pimp, even if the legacy media refuses to admit it. They know. They definitely know the deal, and none of these people want to step up to the plate. None of these people want to come forward and do the right thing. Instead, they just keep hiding. They just keep ducking justice. And as for the prosecution, well, they let it occur. How often do we have to hear from different journalists, media members, etc., about the inaction? Is there ever going to be a time when we see all of these people swooped up? And I mean all of them. Now, I've stated earlier that there are definitely signs pointing towards that, right? And it looks like we're moving in that direction from a prosecutorial standpoint, but I'm starting to become impatient, right? We've waited long enough. And if you think we have waited long enough, how do you think the survivors feel? At the end of the day, they have waited decades for their justice. They have waited decades for these people to be arrested and to have their day in court, to stare them down and to let them know their days, their reign of terror is over. And now, well, now, the shoe is most certainly on the other foot, and the predator has most certainly become the prey. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, we'll be back later on. Enjoy your Sunday afternoon.